It was a lifestyle shoot in Laguna Beach, California. Yoga wear to be exact. Shot at a cliffside villa. The brand wanted something that felt centered and strong, which is marketing speak for make everyone look super hot. The house itself was absolutely ridiculous. One of those designed places, minimalist, white on white, every edge sharp enough to draw some blood. Floor to ceiling windows that screamed money. A place built to look absolutely stunning, but cost someone their soul and 3 divorces to finance. A place that looked great in magazines, but you absolutely did not want to hang out in. And the crew was stacked. 2 gaffers. From what I remember, they were both named Kyle or maybe Dan. Both wearing black cargo shorts and a pair of Vans that have seen better days. They were the kind of guys who speak in only words like stoked and dope, but somehow really knew their shit. We had a makeup artist who took herself way too seriously. She probably required her own NDA. A stylist who was just kind of cool. Her name was Katrina, and she was just a good person. And then there was the client team. 3 tech bros from Vancouver moved to the Bay Area as brand evangelists who used words like authenticity while sipping canned coconut water and talking about their vision. We were a few hours in, and the light was cooperating. Images were looking really good because, obviously, the models were mid-pose, warrior 2, or maybe triangle. I honestly know nothing about yoga. The mood was fake serene, but approachable if you were Orange County wealthy. And then I saw her quickly walking towards me. The producer, named Katie, shuffled over, clutching her iPad like it was a defibrillator. Hey, Patrick, so, we have a problem. I've heard this before. They always say it the same way. Okay, what's up? I ask in a cool, calm, collected manner. Well, the toilet upstairs is overflowing. I break eye contact and stare off into the Pacific Ocean. It's bright blue, looks perfect. Okay, how bad is it? I ask, now speaking very quietly so only she can hear. She whispered back like we were on a drug deal. Well, it's bad, she said. Water, and you know what is overflowing. And the homeowner is off grid. I tried calling him, and we can't reach a cleaner, and the water is kind of spreading. Can you just take a look? My internal monologue was absolute chaos. On the outside, calm, cool, collected Patrick. I'll come and solve it. But the anger character from Inside Out, the red guy with the flaming head, was smashing the what the fuck button like it owed him money.
That's it! No, breathe, find your happy place.
Red flashing lights, sirens, emotional arson, total system overload. But front and center, holding that mic, was that annoying, well-trained Midwestern voice in my head. The one that's been programmed since birth to be polite no matter what, even while hemorrhaging dignity. The part of me whispered, smile, Patrick. Be helpful. Make it work. They'll like you more if you fix it. So I smiled like a hostage negotiator, trying to get everyone out alive. And I said, sure, no problem. How bad can it be? I muttered to myself. And as I go up these stairs, I caught both Kyle's or Dan staring at me like they just saw a dead body. One gave a slow, deliberate shake to his head. The other raised his eyebrows and actually took a step back, like I just asked for his favorite surfboard. Their message was clear. We lift lights, not shit water. And the makeup artist didn't even blink. In fact, she didn't even look up from her phone. And then there's the client team. Gone. Poof. Decided it was perfect timing to make a Starbucks run. I swear on everything, they literally stepped over a puddle in the hallway on their way out and still had the audacity to ask the producer, "So you'd think you'd be back shooting by the time that we get back? I'm craving a flat white." At that moment, anger flipped the table. Joy was crying in the corner. Disgust lit a cigarette, but damn that Midwestern politeness. She just smiled, wiped her hands on the apron made of childhood repression, and said, "Yeah, sure, I hope so." So then I went upstairs. I will say this in the strongest language possible. I walked upstairs to hell. The hallway smelled like a combination of eucalyptus, jasmine, and despair. Water was already bleeding through the baseboards, and I stepped into the bathroom and saw it. The toilet was bubbling up like a cursed cauldron. So I did honestly what any reasonable person would do. I became Patrick the plumber. From Patrick the photographer, now Patrick the plumber. First, I had to stop the water supply. I found the shutoff valve behind the toilet, that little silver football-shaped knob that's supposed to turn counterclockwise, but had apparently been welded in place by years of neglect and coastal humidity. I cranked on that thing like I was trying to open a pickle jar with arthritis. Nothing. Okay, no worries. Plan B. I popped off the tank lid, reached my hand in, not thinking about the water, and pressed down on that flapper, that rubber circle thing that seals the bottom of the tank. Take notes, you might need this someday. The water was clean, thank God. Then I grabbed that float ball, this plastic sphere that's supposed to rise with the water level, and physically held it up like I was making toast to my own dignity. The water stopped rising, thank God. And I stood there, one hand holding a float ball, while the other steadying myself over a toilet tank. Water now soaking through my shoes, while the producer and Kyle, or Dan, or whatever, and some model just stared at me in the hallway. This is what they don't teach you in school. Sometimes your job is literally keeping shit from hitting the fan. Or in this case, keeping the shit from hitting the white marble floors of someone's minimalist fever dream. 15 minutes later, the toilet finally surrendered. The water stopped. I was soaked in sweat, toilet water, and existential regret. I cleaned myself up. The client came back, drinks in hand, still basically blissfully unaware, and asked, "Oh, nice. Are we back on schedule?" I promise I didn't kill them, which in retrospect should count as a performance bonus. We got back to shooting while the producer started mopping the house. The models hit their marks, leggings hugged in all the right places, and the sun kissed the deck like it had read the mood board. The final shots, I'm going to tell you, were perfect. They're probably right now in some mall with soft jazz playing in the background while some 11-year-old boy will probably deface them with mustaches. That day, I wasn't just paid to take photos. I was paid to keep joy in charge while anger burned down the control room. To solve a crisis, save a shoot, and smile through it like a good little professional. This is my life. 1 foot in the creative and 1 foot in chaos. And if you're lucky, only one of them will be ankle deep in high-end poop water. Welcome to photography, I guess. Population, idiots who thought this job was just taking pictures. There's actually a psychological term for this. It's called emotional labor, coined by psychologist Arlie Hochschild. It describes the invisible effort of managing feelings and appearances in professional settings. You know, like smiling while ankle deep in poop water for a brand that preaches wellness. My name is Patrick. This is the Terrible Photographer Podcast. And today's episode, I'm calling The Job I Hate the Least. So let me tell you what photography actually is. What professional photography actually is. This was last year. I was working for a global electronics brand who hired me to shoot a product lifestyle campaign. You'll know the name, one of those tech companies with $1 billion R&D budget and a legal team that could literally sue me to the moon if I revealed any details of this story. So I'm going to keep it relatively generic. They were launching a sleek new piece of fitness consumer tech, part gadget, part fashion accessory, part fitness tracker. And they wanted the visuals to feel human, elevated, and emotionally charged, which again is corporate speak for make it look cinematic, but don't ask too many questions. And their agency brought me in because they liked my work and they said that they wanted authenticity, claimed that they didn't want another overproduced, soulless campaign. They actually did. It was a 2-day shoot, 4 locations, talent, stylist, crew, gear, and I ran point on everything. Production, logistics, scheduling, permits, the kind of job where you basically feel like an air traffic controller more than a photographer, just trying to keep planes from colliding. Day 2, halfway through the first setup, the brand manager pulls me aside. Hey, so I'm thinking instead of shooting the product with talent in the coffee shop setting, what if we moved everyone to the park across the street? I think it would feel more organic. The producer, who was listening behind me, immediately jumps in. That would be beautiful, she said, but we would need permits for the park, and it's 2 p.m., sun is outside, and we've been lighting it for mid-morning in here. There isn't any way we could get permits for lighting that quick. The brand manager said, oh, well, what about just adding a few more shots of the product in some different hands, the brand manager said. Like close-ups of different people using it in different parts of the house. Well, we could do that, the producer responded, but it would add about 2 hours to today's schedule. And we would need to discuss additional usage fees since that expands our talent needs. And we will quickly run into our heart out. And that's how a quick thought turns into a 15-minute sidewalk negotiation about timelines and budgets and whether we can magically squeeze in 40% of the remaining shot list before our heart out at 5:30 p.m. But hey, we're professionals, so we adapt, we accommodate, and we smile through it all. The good news? Well, they decided to stick with the original plan. The bad news, however, this conversation happened 3 more times that day with different quick thoughts about angles and product placement and whether we should maybe grab a few more setups while we're here. And that should have been, honestly, the end of it. But the real story didn't start until after I delivered the work. You know, I got into photography to learn about light. Turns out I should have majored in hostage negotiation with a minor in cash flow management. I sent the invoice for this job net 30 according to California law. Clean, accurate, creative flee, production costs, licensing. And I will say that I'm already tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket, fronted for production costs, bet on the premise that a Fortune 500 company would actually pay their invoice. Week 1 past the due date, nothing. Week 2 past the due date, silence. Week 3 past the due date, I followed up. Polite, professional, like someone still pretending to believe in systems. Week 4, got an email back. Hey, just checked with accounting, should be any day now. It was not. By week 6, I was in full-blown email purgatory. Every message got kicked to someone new. Oh, it's working its way through accounting process. Oh, it has to be approved by the CFO because it's over a certain amount. Wait, we need a revised PO. I'll get that CC'd on threads with 8 people. Each one refuses to give me any sort of timeline. Meanwhile, the campaign launched. We're talking billboards, YouTube pre-rolls, Instagram ads, website banners, my photos live, global, monetized. They were printing money with my work. And I was refreshing my bank account like I was popping in nickels at a Reno gas station slot machine. Fun fact, by the way, little sidebar, according to the Freelancers Union, get this, 71% of freelancers have dealt with non-payment or late payments. So yeah, if your net 30 turns into net never, you're not alone. You're just undercapitalized. And at week 8, I sent a final notice, pointed to my contract once again. They replied within hours. Not with payment, just another delay. Hey, so thanks so much for your patience. The payment is in process, just waiting for a signature to get through accounts payable. Well, apparently, accounts payable must have been on some sort of sabbatical. When the transfer finally cleared, I stared at that deposit like it was a mirage. Not really joy, not victory, just finally. And I think people love to romanticize this job, you know? Friends see the attractive models and cool locations. They see you travel to cool spots. They see you with all the fancy photography gear. But here's the unfiltered truth. Photography isn't done when you press the shutter. It's not done when you deliver an edit. It's not even done when your work goes live and starts making somebody else money. It's done when the money hits your account, cleared, verified, not pending. Because in this business, you're not just the artist, you're the producer, the project manager, the insurance, the bank, and if you're not careful, you're the sucker. So no, I don't just want to circle back next quarter. No, I don't want to resend the invoice one more time. And no, I don't want your exposure. I just want the money and I want it on time. But this is where the shit gets a little weirder because somewhere between the invoice chase and the creative brief, you realize that you've become something that you've never planned on becoming. Sometimes you're even a therapist. Last month, I had this branding session with a small business owner here in town. It was supposed to be simple, headshots, maybe behind the scenes images for her website. Standard stuff, 1 hour in and out. I showed up, we shook hands. I started setting up some lights and she immediately started crying. No joke. Not like emotional tears, like full-blown emotional breakdown. Turns out her partner had just bailed with half the money and the client list. And she wasn't even sure she could keep the doors open past Christmas. So there I am, holding a C-stand, trying to figure out if I should keep setting up or just sit down and listen or leave. I chose listen. For the next 45 minutes, I heard about her divorce, her ex-partner's betrayal, her fear that she'd wasted 5 years in her life savings on building something that was never really hers. And then, this is the kicker. At one point, she wiped her eyes, looked at me, and said, "Okay, fuck it. Let's do this. I need these photos to work. I need to look like I've got my shit together. And we shot for 2 hours. She was incredible. She was confident. She was warm. She was genuine. You'd never know that she'd been falling apart an hour earlier. But here's the thing. I wasn't hired to be a counselor. I wasn't trained for it. I don't have a psychology degree or a therapy license. But in that moment, that's what the job required. Because photography isn't just about light and composition. It's about people. And people are fucking complicated. And they're carrying shit you can't see. And sometimes, before they can be vulnerable in front of your camera, they need to be vulnerable with you. So you listen, you hold space, you become whatever they need you to be in that moment. Even if what they need is someone to witness their breakdown in a corporate office park while your strobes wait patiently against the wall. There's a reason why some wedding photographers end up doubling as impromptu grief counselors, conflict mediators, or even emotional translators. When a camera shows up, people think that they're ready to be seen. But being seen and being witnessed, that's completely different. And that's not in the shot list, but it's always part of the job. Okay, so then there's the gear. Oh, the gear. Let me tell you about the day I learned that being prepared and being smart are not the same thing. This happened last year. A good friend of mine called me in a panic. Their nonprofit that they work for, an inner city choir, had a last-minute emergency. The videographer who they had worked with before bailed. The performance was that night, and they needed someone to cover it. Not next week, not tomorrow, in literally hours. And because I apparently have a terminal condition called being a fucking nice guy, I said yes. And they were a great nonprofit, the kind of group that actually helps people. The kind of people who deserve great work, but usually get last-minute favors from overextended freelancers and dudes with gimbals who barely know how to use. And I just wanted to help, so I jumped in. Now, I want to say, for context, I'm a photographer first, and videographer maybe like fifth. And let me just say this, though. I've worked with some insanely talented video people. I know enough to be dangerous and just enough to absolutely torch myself when the clock is ticking and the pressure is on. And this clock was ticking loud. Here are my problems. Problem 1, gear. So I have 2 cameras in my kit. I have the R5, the Canon R5, the OG. And then I also have the R5C. They are amazing cameras, but the Canon R5 has recording limits, and a live choir performance is longer than 20 minutes. It isn't exactly a start and stop production. I own 3 lenses. I have a 15 to 35 2.8 for wide establishing shots. I have a RF 28 to 70 f2 that honestly pays my rent, and a 100mm macro for product work and some headshots. None of these are long enough to sit discreetly in the back of a church and catch tight coverage from the soloist at 70 feet. So I hit ShareGrid in my panic mode. ShareGrid, if you don't know, is like a local renting solution. So peer-to-peer renting solution. I found a guy up north who was renting a Canon C70 kit with a 70 to 200 RF. Solid, fast, expensive though, about $650 after insurance and fees. And I paid the owner some extra to deliver it immediately. And he drove 35 minutes south from Carlsbad through rush hour traffic to hand it off to me in a parking lot like it was contraband. Then I realized that I didn't have enough memory cards. So I had to go to the camera store. George's Camera here in San Diego. Great store, good people. But I dropped another $380 on 2 CF Express cards. I was still sweating, still problem solving. And when I pulled up to that church, my hazard lights were on. I was in the fire lane, throwing gear out of my Subaru, hoping it wouldn't get jacked. And it was a hot day in San Diego, probably one of the hottest days of the year. The kind of heat where even the stone walls felt like they were radiating anxiety. I was soaked before I even opened a tripod. I had about 20 minutes to set up. That's 3 cameras, 2 tripods, balancing a gimbal I hadn't touched in over a year. While I was pretending I absolutely wasn't losing my mind. I ran up and down those aisles, dodging old ladies, tripping over pews, looking like I was trying to defuse a bomb. And then comes the real punchline. This still isn't funny. I forgot about audio. Completely. Which is a little ironic because I do a podcast. Things that you don't think about as a stills photographer. And I guess I assumed and hoped there'd be some sort of sound guy there, a sound mixer that I could tap into, some kind of live mix, booms, choir mics, that sort of thing. There was none of it. Just a volunteer sound guy with a small PA system meant for room fill and a mic duct taped to a music stand and the kind of setup used for bingo night, not a multicam choral production in a church. And so there I was with a beautifully over-prepared visual rig and no clean audio. Just room tone and scratch mic audio from my cameras. It was like buying a Ferrari and realizing there's no gas in the tank. And there's a whole subculture of photographers who mistake backup gear for backup self-worth. And I was one of them that day. This is called the just-in-case trap, a form of anxiety driven by over-preparing where you try to control the chaos by sheer gear quantity. Spoiler, it doesn't work. Chaos doesn't care how many Pelican cases that you brought. And do you want to hear the icing on the cake? This is still so painful. I spent over $1,000 that day between the gear rental, the rush delivery, the memory cards, not even including gas and time. And I never once asked them about budget because I wasn't thinking like a business. I was in problem solving mode. Get it done mode, be the hero mode, save the day mode. Except I didn't save the day. Not really. You know why? The only usable footage was B-roll. Stuff that didn't need to be synced to sound. The actual performance, beautiful, moving, utterly unusable because there's no clean audio, no backup, just regret echoing off those stained glass windows. And to be clear, this was not the nonprofit's fault. They had a problem, and they asked me, the professional, and I said yes. The wreckage was mine because I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't set the expectations, and I didn't pause long enough to realize that sometimes just because you can help doesn't mean you should. And I walked away with 3 things. Some okay to decent B-roll that I could hand over. $1,000 invoice with my own name on it. And lastly, a hard-earned reminder that gear doesn't lie, but hope sure as hell does. Sometimes the most expensive jobs are the ones that you do for free. Let me switch gears. Sometimes, though, something happens that reminds you why you're here. Not every shoot asks you to be vulnerable. Most of the time, commercial work like mine is just that, commercial. You show up, you shoot what's on the deck. If you stay on budget, you make sure no one cries unless the client specifically asks for it. Then you pack up, invoice, deliver, move on. But sometimes the universe drops you into something sacred. And you show up for it, or you don't. You miss it. And this particular shoot in Las Vegas, this shoot wasn't supposed to be anything heavy or hard. I had worked with this client before, a company that makes support chairs and mobility devices for kids and adults with disabilities. I'd done a handful of jobs with them already, standard stuff. Interview talking head with parents, capture some lifestyle B-roll, get a few stills for case studies and thumbnails. And the kids that I met up until that point were thriving. They were all awesome. Kids with cerebral palsy who were smiling, laughing, learning to sit, stand, walk for the first time thanks to these incredible devices. And it was meaningful work, sure, but it was still structured, it was still commercial, it was still contained. This one, though, felt different the moment that I walked through the door. Before I even unpacked my camera from my Pelican case, one of the client team pulled me aside. She had a quiet voice and she put her hand on my shoulder. Just so you know, this case is a little bit more severe. The girl that we're filming, she probably won't make it more than a few more years. And that hit me like a steel-toed boot to the face. Because I'm not just a photographer. I'm a dad. I'm a dad to a daughter. And empathy ruins you in the best possible way. It makes the job harder, but the work better. And suddenly, I wasn't just looking through a lens. I was looking through a terrifying what if. What if it was my own daughter? And I kept my game face on. That's what you do. You stay professional and you stay focused. But something was different that day. I wasn't thinking about the campaign objectives or product positioning. I honestly didn't give a shit about that. What I was thinking was what this family would want to have forever. So I documented everything, not just the product shots, not just the testimonials, everything. The mom reading to her daughter, the way that she brushed the girl's hair back behind her ear, the quiet smile exchange when she brushed a piece of silk fabric on her arm. I shot more than anyone asked for, way more. Because in that moment, I wasn't trying to impress the client. That was so far from my mind. I was trying to leave this family with evidence of love, of dignity, and of presence. And I delivered the job as requested. They got what they needed, the client. But I also sent the family everything that I had, every frame, every second of footage, not for credit, not for a portfolio, not for a quote from my website, just because I believe it's the right thing to do. And it's what I would have wanted if the roles were reversed. And a year later, the little girl passed away. And I don't talk about that shoot often because when I question this career, when the invoices are late or the clients are clueless or I'm stuck editing a campaign that I don't believe in, I think about that day, that family, and that moment. And that's when I remember what this actually is. This isn't just a job. This is a fucking gift. And the camera doesn't just capture what's in front of it. It captures what's behind it too. The heart, the intention, the humanity of the person holding it. And that day reminded me, the best work doesn't come from hiding who you are. It comes from bringing all of it with you, even the parts that hurt, even the parts that scare you, even the parts that make you question whether you're strong enough to witness what's in front of you. Because sometimes being a photographer means being present for the most important moments in someone else's life. And if you're lucky, and if you're really, really lucky, you get to help them remember it forever. That's worth the invoice chasing. That's worth the gear failures. That's worth the existential crisis and the identity confusion and the constant question of whether you're actually making a difference. Because you are. One image at a time, one family at a time, one moment at a time. And sometimes that's enough to keep you going for another year. So at this point, I think I've got a mostly healthy, mostly holistic understanding of what this job actually is. Most days, I know that photography isn't about beautiful light or perfect pixels. Not really. It's about problem solving. That's the real gig. The light, the color, the moment, that's the payoff. But everything leading up to that, it's people, it's gear, it's time, it's money, it's parking, it's expectations, it's mood management, and it's the quiet art of not losing your shit in front of a client. And the truth is, on most days, I kind of hate that part, but it also keeps me coming back. Because those headaches, those logistical migraines, they're what make the good jobs feel like magic. You know, the ones where you pull up and there's parking right in front of where you're shooting, where the client is chill, the shot lists make sense, and someone hands you the exact coffee that you asked for the night before over text, where the crew's laughing and not complaining, where the work feels more like a group project with your friends than a commercial assignment with deliverables and timelines. That's the goal, right? We all want more of that. More jobs that fill your tank and fill your bank account, and fewer that set it on fire. And the only way to get there is to keep learning. It's to keep staying curious. So you ask better questions and you plan harder. You set clearer expectations and you learn where the tripwires are and start walking around them. But even then, shit still goes wrong. Clients ghost you on invoices like you didn't just save their entire campaign. Models cancel an hour before call time. The Digitex laptop decides today is the day that it decides to crap out. Your camera bricks mid-shoot, and suddenly your backup becomes the hero. Look, things happen. That's the only constant. So you breathe. You stay calm. You focus on solutions and not blame. And you're kind, understanding that other people don't know what you know. They don't know the unspoken rules. They are just trying to live their life and pay their own bills. And all of our lives are hard, including our clients. This one's been the hardest for me. You've got to learn to say no, because people will ask the world of you. And sometimes you'll give it to them. Sometimes you'll over-deliver. You'll solve their problems. You'll pick up coffee because your assistant overslept. You'll plunge a toilet at a shoot like it's part of your day rate. But you can't do that every single time. There's a limit. There has to be. Because being a photographer means, I think, being a leader. And being a leader means that you're the one who deals with the shit, literally and metaphorically. You're the one who shows up first, solves the puzzle, keeps the energy right, and takes the hit when things fall apart. That's what you're actually being paid for. The images, that's just a receipt, man. So here's what I want you to do this week. Stop pretending that this job is sexy. Stop apologizing for the fact that most of your time is spent on things that aren't photography. Own the fact that you're running a small business that occasionally produces beautiful things. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself laughing at the beautiful absurdity of it all instead of crying into your unpaid invoices. Because here's the secret that no one talks about. Every photographer that you admire has plunged a toilet. Metaphorically, if not literally. They've chased invoices. They've dealt with impossible clients, and they've questioned whether this whole thing is even worth it. The difference between the ones who make it and the ones who don't is not talent. It's stubbornness. It's audacity. It's the ability to show up tomorrow even when today was a complete fucking disaster. It's finding humor in the chaos instead of letting it destroy you. And it's remembering that somewhere between administrative bullshit and the technical problems, you occasionally get to capture something really goddamn beautiful, something real, something that matters. Charles Bukowski sums it up really well. We are here to laugh at the odds and to live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us. This is the job that I hate the least. And honestly, that might really be the most romantic thing that I've ever said about photography. So, we'll see you next Tuesday. Until then, stay courageous, stay curious, and yeah, stay terrible.